You're not half the woman your sister is." My mother said it casually, like she was commenting on the weather. She didn't flinch. She didn't lower her voice. She didn't even look at me. We were at dinner. Friday night. The tradition I never dared break. Except this time, I did. I pushed my chair back. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. "Then she can start paying your rent." My dad froze. The fork slipped from his fingers and clattered against his plate. Rent? What rent? And just like that, the lie I had kept for 3 years was about to explode. My name is Samantha Hayes. I'm 31 years old. According to my parents, I'm the least impressive daughter they ever raised. My sister Danielle is the sun. That's how Mom describes her. She lights up every room she walks into. Meanwhile, I am what? A shadow, I guess. The forgettable one. The backup plan. Every Friday night, I show up at their house in Riverside. I cook pot roast or lasagna. I bring apple pie from the bakery on Main Street. I fix the leaky faucet in the kitchen. I replace light bulbs. I listen to their endless complaints about bills, groceries, the broken water heater, property taxes. Danielle never shows up. She's always too busy. Spa appointments in Newport Beach. Weekend trips to Napa Valley. Important work dinners with clients. But she's the hero. Mom tells everyone at church, at the grocery store, at her book club, Danielle is so successful. We are so blessed to have her. No one ever mentions that Danielle hasn't contributed a single dollar to them in years. They don't know because I never told them. I carried their secret. I carried their shame. I carried everything. And tonight, sitting at that dinner table with Mom's words hanging in the air like poison, I realized something. I was done carrying it. Dad's face had gone from confusion to pale white shock. "Samantha, what are you talking about?" Mom's eyes flashed with warning. "Samantha, don't." But I was already talking. The mortgage, Dad. The one that's been getting paid every month for the last 3 years. The property taxes. The utilities. The homeowner's insurance. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Danielle, who had been scrolling through her phone at the other end of the table, finally looked up. "What's going on?" I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. My fingers were trembling, but I managed to navigate to my transaction history. Transfer after transfer after transfer. All going to the same place, 847, Maple Drive, Riverside, California. Their address. I turned the screen toward Dad. His eyes scanned the list. Once. Twice. 3 times. Then he looked at Mom. "You told me Danielle was helping us." Mom lifted her chin defensively. "Well, she did help. In her own way." Danielle blinked. "I didn't help with anything." The silence that followed was deafening. Dad sat back in his chair like someone had punched him in the chest. "I need to go back. To explain how it all started. 3 years ago, I discovered something that changed everything. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March. I had stopped by their house to drop off groceries. Mom had mentioned Dad's knee was bothering him, so I figured they could use the help. The front door was unlocked. I walked in carrying 2 bags from Trader Joe's, calling out hello. No answer. I put the groceries away and noticed a stack of mail on the kitchen counter. Bills, mostly. I wasn't trying to snoop, but the top envelope was open, and I saw the header, Final Notice in angry red letters. My stomach dropped. I picked it up. It was from Bank of America. A mortgage statement. 6 months overdue. I stood there, frozen, reading words that made my blood run cold. Foreclosure proceedings, immediate payment required, total amount due, $34,800. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Dad appeared in the doorway, still in his pajamas at 2 in the afternoon. He saw me holding the letter. His face crumbled. Samantha, Dad, what's going on? He sank into a chair at the kitchen table. He suddenly looked so much older than his 63 years. I lost my job, he said quietly. 8 months ago. The engineering firm downsized. I've been looking, but no one wants to hire someone my age. My hands were shaking. Does Mom know? She knows we are struggling. She doesn't know how bad it is. I didn't want to worry her. What about Danielle? Dad laughed bitterly. Your sister has her own life. Her fancy job at the marketing agency. Her luxury apartment in Santa Monica. I'm not going to burden her. But you'll burden yourself, I thought. You'll lose your home before you ask for help. I can help, I said immediately. Dad shook his head. No. Absolutely not. You work hard for your money. You have your own bills. Dad. I said no, Samantha. He stood up and walked out of the room, ending the conversation. But I couldn't let it go. That night, I sat at my kitchen table in my small apartment in Fullerton, staring at my own bank statements. I worked as a project coordinator at a construction company. My salary was decent, not Danielle's 6 figures, but enough. I did the math. If I cancelled my planned vacation to Seattle, stopped eating out, worked overtime whenever possible, and cut every unnecessary expense, I could cover their mortgage payment each month. It would be tight. Really tight. But I could do it. The next day, I called their bank. I set up automatic payments from my account. I paid off the overdue balance using my emergency savings. And I never told anyone. Not Dad. Not Mom. Especially not Danielle. I told myself it was temporary. Just until Dad found another job. Just until they got back on their feet. But months turned into a year. Then 2 years. Then 3. And I kept paying. Kept sacrificing. Kept staying quiet. Because I loved them. And because I couldn't bear the thought of them losing their home. I just never imagined they'd give all the credit to someone else. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the invisibility. Every Friday, I'd drive 40 minutes from Fullerton to Riverside after work. Traffic on the 91 was always brutal, but I never missed a week. I'd arrive around 6:30, usually carrying something, groceries, a prescription refill from CVS, a replacement part for whatever had broken that week. Mom would be in the living room watching her reality shows. She'd barely look up when I walked in. Oh, Samantha, you're here. Not thank you for coming. Not we appreciate you. Just an acknowledgement of my presence, like I was the mailman dropping off a package. Dad was always warmer. He'd give me a hug, ask about my week. But even he had a way of making me feel small. How's work? He'd ask. Good. Busy. We just broke ground on a new housing development in Anaheim. That's nice. Hey, did I tell you about Danielle's promotion? She's VP of Client Relations now, making $180,000 a year. Every conversation eventually circled back to Danielle. Danielle's career. Danielle's boyfriend, Trevor, who worked in finance. Danielle's new Audi Q5. Danielle's vacation to the Bahamas. I'd stand in their kitchen, making chicken parmesan or beef stew, listening to them marvel at my sister's accomplishments while I paid their bills. The irony was suffocating. When is Danielle coming to visit? I asked once, trying to keep my voice neutral. Mom waved her hand dismissively. She's so busy, honey. She works 12-hour days. We can't expect her to drive all the way out here every week. I work full-time too, I said quietly. Well, yes, but your job isn't as demanding. I bit my tongue and kept stirring the sauce. The comparisons were constant. Danielle always dresses so professionally. Danielle has such good taste in furniture. Danielle is so confident when she speaks. You should work on your public speaking, Samantha. I started arriving later, leaving earlier, making excuses about why I couldn't stay for dessert. But I never stopped coming. And I never stopped paying. In 3 years, I'd transferred over $90,000 to cover their expenses. I'd cancelled a trip to New York to see my college roommate. I'd stopped buying new clothes. I'd driven my Toyota Camry an extra 2 years past when I should have traded it in. I'd said no to dinner invitations, weekend trips, concerts with friends, anything that cost money. My savings account, which had once been growing steadily toward a down payment on a house, was nearly empty. But my parents had a roof over their heads. They had heat in the winter and air conditioning in the summer. They had food in the refrigerator and medicine in the cabinet. And they had no idea I was the reason why. The breaking point came 3 months ago. I walked in on a Friday carrying a bag of medications from the pharmacy, Dad's blood pressure pills, Mom's arthritis cream, and found them laughing in the living room. Mom was on the phone. "Oh, we are so blessed," she was saying. "Yes, Danielle has been such a help to us. I don't know what we'd do without her." I stood in the doorway, holding their prescriptions, invisible as always. That's when something inside me cracked. The dinner that changed everything happened on a Friday in late October. I almost didn't go. I'd had a brutal week at work, 2 project deadlines, a supply chain issue with a lumber supplier, and a client who kept changing specifications. I was exhausted. But I went anyway. Because that's what I did. I brought a pecan pie from the bakery on Magnolia Avenue and a bottle of Tylenol for Dad's back pain. When I walked in, I immediately sensed something was off. Mom was dressed up, a navy blouse and slacks instead of her usual sweatshirt. Dad had shaved and put on cologne. The dining room table was set with the good china. "What's the occasion?" I asked, setting the pie on the counter. "Danielle's coming," Mom said brightly. "She texted this morning. She has news." My stomach tightened. Danielle coming to dinner was rare enough to feel like a national holiday in this house. She arrived 20 minutes later in her white Audi, wearing designer jeans and a cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. "Sorry I'm late," she called, breezing through the door with a bottle of expensive wine. Traffic was insane. Mom practically glowed. "Sweetheart, you look gorgeous." They hugged like they hadn't seen each other in years, even though Danielle had FaceTimed with them just 3 days ago. We sat down to dinner, pot roast that I'd made, as usual, and Danielle launched into stories about her life. Her promotion. Her new office with a view of the Pacific. Trevor's parents' beach house in Malibu, where they'd spent last weekend. Mom and Dad hung on every word. I pushed food around my plate and said nothing. Then Danielle dropped her news. "Trevor and I are thinking about buying a house," she announced. "Something in Manhattan Beach. There's a beautiful 4-bedroom we are looking at. $2.3 million. Mom gasped. "Oh, honey. That's wonderful." Dad beamed. "I'm so proud of you." Danielle smiled modestly. "We are really blessed. I mean, I've worked hard, but we've been lucky too." Something hot and sharp rose in my chest. Lucky. She had no idea what luck actually meant. Mom raised her wine glass. "To Danielle. Our successful daughter." That's when she turned to me. "Samantha, you should really take notes from your sister. She's accomplished so much." I set down my fork carefully. "I'm doing fine, Mom." "Fine isn't the same as exceptional," Mom said, and I could hear the disappointment in her voice. "You're 31. Still renting that tiny apartment. Still at the same job. Don't you want more for yourself?" My face burned. "I'm happy with my life." "Well, you shouldn't be," Mom said, her voice sharpening. "Look at Danielle. She's buying $1 million house. What are you doing?" The words came out before I could stop them. "Paying for yours." The table went silent. Mom blinked. "What?" "Nothing," I said, my heart hammering. But Dad was staring at me now. "Samantha, what did you just say?" I could have backed down, laughed it off, changed the subject. Instead, I met my mother's eyes and repeated, "I said I'm paying for your house." And then I told them everything. The words came pouring out like a dam had broken. 3 years ago, I found the foreclosure notice, I said, my voice shaking but steady. Dad had lost his job. You were 6 months behind on the mortgage. I set up automatic payments from my bank account. I've been paying your mortgage, property taxes, utilities, and insurance every single month since then. Dad's face drained of color. "That's not possible." I pulled out my phone with trembling hands. "Look." I showed them the transaction history. Page after page of transfers. $2,850 to Wells Fargo Home Mortgage. $420 to Southern California Edison. $180 to Riverside Water Department. $1,200 to State Farm Insurance. Month after month after month. Dad stared at the screen like he was seeing a ghost. Mom's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. Danielle had gone completely still, her wine glass frozen halfway to her lips. $92,000, I said quietly. That's how much I've paid in 3 years. Dad's hands were shaking. Why didn't you tell us? Because you refused my help. My voice cracked. I offered, and you said no. So I did it quietly. I thought you'd figure it out eventually. But you never did. Dad turned to Mom. You told me Danielle was helping us. Mom's face flushed red. I thought she was. She sent us money once. I just assumed. Once. I interrupted. How much? Mom hesitated. $500. For your father's birthday. $500. I had paid $92,000, and Danielle had contributed $500 once. And she was the hero. Danielle finally spoke, her voice small. Mom, why would you think I was paying their bills? Because you're successful, Mom snapped. You make good money. I just assumed you were taking care of things. You assumed? Dad's voice was rising now. You let me believe our daughter was supporting us for 3 years based on an assumption. Well, what was I supposed to think? Mom's voice turned defensive. Samantha never said anything. Because you never asked. I was standing now, my chair scraping against the floor. You never once wondered how the bills were getting paid. You just accepted it and gave Danielle all the credit. That's not fair, Mom said. We didn't know. You didn't want to know, I shot back. It was easier to believe Danielle was the generous one, the successful one, the daughter worth celebrating. Dad put his head in his hands. Oh God. Samantha, I'm so sorry. Don't, I said, my voice breaking. Don't apologize. Just acknowledge it. Acknowledge that I've been here every week for 3 years. That I've sacrificed my savings, my vacation, my life to make sure you kept this house. Mom's face hardened. Oh, please. You're acting like you're some kind of martyr. You're single. You don't have children. You can afford it. The words hit me like a slap. I can afford it. I repeated slowly. Mom, I haven't bought new clothes in 2 years. I'm driving a car with 180,000 miles on it. I eat ramen for dinner half the week so I can pay your mortgage. Well, no one forced you to do that, Mom said coldly. And just like that, I was done. You're right, I said. No one forced me. Which is why I'm stopping. I didn't storm out dramatically. I simply picked up my purse, walked to the door, and left. Behind me, I could hear Dad calling my name. Danielle saying something in a shocked voice. Mom trying to justify herself. I got in my Camry, drove home, and sat at my kitchen table in complete silence. Then I opened my laptop. One by one, I cancelled every automatic payment. Wells Fargo home mortgage, cancelled. Southern California Edison, cancelled. Riverside Water, cancelled. State Farm Insurance, cancelled. I sent an email to the bank removing my account from their mortgage payment system. The whole process took 15 minutes. 3 years of sacrifice, erased in 15 minutes. I closed my laptop and went to bed. For the first time in 3 years, I slept through the entire night. The next 2 weeks were silent. No calls. No texts. Nothing. I threw myself into work. I went out to dinner with my co-worker Nina. I bought a new dress at Nordstrom, the first clothing purchase I'd made in over a year. I started looking at apartments in nicer neighborhoods. I felt lighter. Free. Then, on a Saturday morning, my phone buzzed. It was a text from my neighbor in Riverside, Phyllis, an older woman who lived next door to my parents. Phyllis, honey, I think you should see this. Attached was a photo. I opened it, and my blood ran cold. Stretched across my parents' front porch was a giant banner in bright blue and gold. Congratulations, Danielle. Thank you for saving our home. Balloons were tied to the porch railing. A decorative wreath hung on the door. They were throwing her a party. For saving the house that I saved. The text from Mom came 3 hours later. Mom, family dinner tomorrow at 4 p.m. Very important. Please come. I stared at the message for a long time. Then another text came through. Mom, Danielle is being honored. You should be here to support your sister. I laughed out loud. Actually laughed. But I texted back, I'll be there. Because I had one more thing to say. Sunday at 4 o'clock, I pulled up to the house. The banner was still there. More balloons had been added. Cars lined the street. This wasn't a family dinner. This was a full-blown celebration. I walked inside carrying a USB drive in my pocket. The living room was packed. Aunt Beverly and Uncle Craig. Cousins. Family friends. Phyllis from next door. Even Father Murphy from their church. A slideshow was playing on the TV. Our hero, Danielle. Photos of Danielle smiling. At graduation. At her job. In front of her Audi. People were clapping. I stood in the back, watching. Mom spotted me and waved me over, but I stayed where I was. She tapped her wine glass with a spoon. Everyone, thank you so much for coming. We wanted to gather today to celebrate our daughter Danielle, who saved our family when we needed it most. We are so grateful for her generosity. Danielle stood up, looking uncomfortable. Mom, I don't think. Let me finish, Mom interrupted. Danielle, you gave us hope when we had none. You made sure we could stay in our home. We love you so much. Applause filled the room. I raised my hand. Before she gives her speech, I said calmly, I have something to show everyone. Every head turned toward me. Mom's smile faltered. Samantha, this isn't the time. Actually, I said, walking toward the TV, this is exactly the time. I unplugged Mom's laptop and plugged in my USB drive. What are you doing? Mom hissed. I didn't answer. I just clicked play. The first slide appeared on the screen. 3 years of truth. Bank statements filled the screen. Every transaction highlighted. Every transfer documented. October 12, 2022, $2,850 to Wells Fargo Mortgage. November 12, 2022, $2,850 to Wells Fargo Mortgage. December 12, 2022, $2,850 to Wells Fargo Mortgage. Page after page. Month after month. All from my account. All with my name on them. The room went completely silent. I advanced to the next slide. A summary page. Total paid, $92,340. Mortgage payments, 36 months. Property taxes, 3 years. Utilities, 36 months. Insurance, 3 years. Paid by Samantha Hayes. Gasps rippled through the room. Aunt Beverly's mouth hung open. Father Murphy looked shocked. Phyllis was staring at Mom with something like horror. I turned to face everyone. For 3 years, I said, my voice steady, I paid every bill for this house. The mortgage. The taxes. Everything. Not Danielle. Me. Mom tried to interrupt. Samantha, you're making this into. Into what? I cut her off. Into the truth? Yes, I am. I looked directly at Danielle, who had tears streaming down her face. I'm not angry at you, I told her. You didn't know. But they did. I turned to Mom and Dad. You knew someone was keeping you afloat. You just didn't care who it was. You were happy to believe it was the daughter you were proud of. The successful one. The one who lit up every room. Dad's face was buried in his hands. Samantha, please. I'm not finished, I said. For 3 years, I worked overtime. I cancelled vacations. I stopped seeing friends. Ate cheap food and drove a broken car and emptied my savings account. And every Friday, I came here. I cooked. I cleaned. I fixed things. And the only thing I ever heard was how I wasn't half the woman my sister is. Mom's face was red. We didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did, I said quietly. And that's why I'm done. I walked over to Dad and handed him an envelope. What's this? He asked. Bank statements showing every payment I made. Keep them. You'll need them when the mortgage company calls wondering why payments stopped 2 weeks ago. The color drained from his face. You stopped paying? I did, I said. Because I'm not your hero anymore. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not your invisible daughter who sacrifices everything while someone else gets the credit. I picked up my purse. Danielle, I said, turning to my sister, the house is yours to save now. Good luck. I walked toward the door. Dad followed me. Samantha, wait. Please. We'll fix this. We'll tell everyone the truth. I turned around. You can tell them whatever you want. But it doesn't change what you showed me. What did we show you? He whispered. I looked him right in the eyes. That I was never enough for you. No matter what I did. No matter how much I gave. I was never going to be the daughter you celebrated. And I'm done trying. I walked out the door. Behind me, I could hear the party dissolving into chaos. Raised voices. Crying. Shocked murmurs. But I kept walking. I got in my car and drove away from that house for the last time. 6 months later, I bought my own place. A small condo in Brea with a balcony overlooking the park. Nothing fancy. But it was mine. Dad called twice a week for the first month after the party. I eventually answered and accepted his apology. We talk now, carefully. Honestly. Mom still hasn't apologized. I don't expect her to. Danielle and I had coffee last month. She cried and told me she never wanted any of this. She offered to help them with their bills going forward. I told her that was between her and them. We are rebuilding. Slowly. As for me, I got promoted at work. I took a trip to Portland with Nina. I joined a book club. And every time I pay my own mortgage, on my own home, I smile. Because I finally learned the most important lesson of all. You can't pour from an empty cup. And I was done being empty.